Okay, so can I just surprise you with a topic?
Yeah, go for it. It's the best.
Well, this is one I was going to do solo, and I thought, why not talk to somebody who's in the business, Lately, we've been seeing a lot of bands that kind of get older. They start, especially the bands we like, they start aging out. And I was wondering what you thought about when should a band finally just call it quits, And is it up to the fans? Is it up to the band? What are the circumstances where you'd be like, yeah, they should probably just call it? Or, man, people still want to come see them, play as long as you can, What do you think?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I'm going to use a real world example of something that I battle with a little bit. So product placement here. My favorite band is Third Eye Blind.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I didn't even notice that was a hoodie for them. Cool.
Yeah. Yep. I love Third Eye Blind. I think their music, for whatever reason, they just really resonated with me more than any other band has. And even their newer stuff, I'm like, I find something about it that I dig. Stephen Jenkins' voice is really kind of turned to shit.
Has it? I haven't heard it.
Yeah, I mean, like, he has some times. If you listen to the most recent thing, they did one of those the NPR sessions.
Oh, really? Tiny Desk?
Tiny Desk, yes.
Ooh,
they
that's
did
like
one.
Raw. Like, you have to be on top of your game for that shit.
So listen to that. They did it, and I was like, oh.
Is he like raspy, or can he not hit high notes?
He can't hit high notes.
Okay.
He just can't hit the high notes. And he always, I'm coming off the flu, guys. But he can't, like, he did Jumper, and I was like, I felt bad for him, right?
Because that song just kicks right into vocals, right?
Yes. Well, especially the chorus is really high, like the Angry Boy a bit too insane or whatever. That it gets up there, and it's hard for me even to sing it.
I can imagine it's, I'd have to go falsetto, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. And so hearing him struggle makes me feel like, maybe it's time, guys, to like fade off into the sunset.
Sure.
But then there's this part of me that when they're here live, I still want to see them. I still want that nostalgia. I don't want to feel like that chapter in life has closed.
It's
right?
like,
and I think that's what people hang on.
Definitely. The nostalgic door was closing. And we're just like, no, we still want to live in those times because we felt so good during those years.
Right. And it's like, as soon as let's say REO Speedwagon is done for good, right? Then the young you who loved REO Speedwagon has to come to the life realization that, like, my time is getting closer to being done, because this band that was so integral in my life, that meant so much, they can't do it anymore, so I can't be far behind.
I see you're tying it to your own mortality. That's deep, for sure. Because when you grow up seeing, let's say, James Hetfield from Metallica being this powerhouse, and one day he's just going to be like hunched over, and they do these like filters sometimes. I think it's with AI where they show him as old people, and I'm like, oh God, he's like the rock. He's the rock of the metal world, like of the mountain, basically, that holds everything together, it seems like. And if he ever goes away or can't sing or can't play or whatever, it's just going to be like a wake-up call, like you said. I think I felt that when I saw Cyndi Lauper recently. Because I was born at a time where the 80s and the 90s were a big deal. Because when you're a certain age, you really, music is so important when you're like developing. And if you feel lonely as a kid, like you don't have a ton of friends, like music is your friend. And so these guys are your friends. And then you see like someone on stage just not even be able to like jump up and down anymore. She was good. Her voice went out one time, but I think it's because the weather was super cold and weird. But just going, wow. And then Lucinda Williams came out for a cameo, and she needed help walking because I think she had like a stroke or something happen. And just seeing your favorite people just barely making it onto the stage to where, it's tough to grasp. But who's to say when someone should quit? Like right now, Heart is back on tour. And I saw a bunch of comments where they're like, gotta hang it up, ladies. It's just not, this is not cool, because Ann Wilson's in a wheelchair right now.
Wow.
And she let her hair go white, and she cut it really short. She's sitting in a wheelchair singing Barracuda and stuff. And a lot of people were just kind of like, ooh, that's great. It's kind of wild to see that. But a part of me goes, well, if it's her own volition that she's going out, no one's forcing her to go out, and people are still buying tickets, maybe it's one of those things that it's not my business,
Well, like, Chrissy from the Pretenders, right, open for Foo Fighters at Target Field, sounded amazing. She's like 72 or something like that.
She's pulling a Joan Jett, or they're just gonna, or a Pat Benatar, with this. Somehow they just keep going.
Yeah, and it was like, I was really impressed with her not only her vocal ability, but you know, she was still pretty energetic playing guitar, and I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and so the younger, I wasn't a huge Pretenders fan, but like I saw a lot of old guys in the crowd that you could just see that it was like so meaningful for them to be able to like rock out to her and the Pretenders. And it was like, yeah, I mean, if you can extend, as long as it's kind of like LeBron James, right, in basketball,
yeah,
like as long as you can still perform at 40, like you don't want to give it up. And that's what you hear about. I think the other thing that we don't always think about is the human element of it. When like pro athletes talk about retirement, a lot of times they keep coming back and coming back because it's the camaraderie. It's they don't know another life outside of that, and it's just their life kind of loses some of its core meaning when they can't continue to do it. And I feel like musicians are probably very much that way. If you can't go out and perform, you can't go out and tour. You probably like Bon Jovi is another great example.
Yeah, Bon Jovi.
Watch that documentary. He's struggling so hardcore with his vocals. He can't even come close to being the vocal powerhouse that he was. But if you watch that documentary on Bon Jovi, he's just like, he's doing everything in the world. He's getting surgeries. He's doing all these treatments because he just wants to continue making music. He just wants to, that's his life. You know what I mean?
He wants to feel that high.
Who's to tell Bon Jovi, nope. It's time to ride off from the sunset, old man.
You know? I guess ultimately it's up to him, but I didn't know he was getting surgeries and he was really just trying to keep it together somehow. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, is there going to come a time where he starts floating in backing tracks and, you know what I mean? Or is he already doing that maybe for the choruses? Because they go really crazy.
It doesn't seem like he is. I think he's getting a lot of help from, you know, the guitar player, members, the new Sambora. You know, I think he's getting, and he's got a lot more guys in the band that I think are contributing some of those things. But he clearly is like, you know, going down instead of hitting those soaring choruses. And, but, you know, for the big Bon Jovi fan, they don't care. They just want to see John Bon Jovi up there another time.
Because it could always be the last time. Now when I go see bands, I'm like, is this the last time I'll ever see Rob Halford or whoever? You just never know, man. People at a certain age, I guess any age they could be gone, but just you feel the mortality sinking in everywhere you look. It's so crazy. And if you do get into like a new band, it sometimes feels like there's not the same connection just because now you're older, you're wiser, you have your set ways, and it's really hard to suddenly get into a brand new act, you know? There's a guy, who is it? Some old like famous guy who was in, I think, a band at one time. Or maybe he was always solo, but he's not even singing anymore. He's coming out and it's like, he looks like he's a zombie. He comes out and he's not even holding the mic up to his mouth and it sounds like he's singing because it's coming through the PA system. And for that, I wonder if some people are just being forced out there. Like, I don't know if he owes money or what. So there's that angle where you're forced to keep going. And that's when it, to me, is really tragic.
Absolutely. Yep.
So don't get any crazy debt. Otherwise, you're going to be out there singing Third Eye Blind when you're 80 and you're actually blind.
Exactly. But yeah, you wonder. I mean, Motley Crue, another example, right? Like, I remember, so my niece was actually on a cheerleader for the Chiefs. And so she got to be on stage when Motley Crue did like, is it a pre or post game show for the Super Bowl and the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl? Not last year, but the year before or whatever.
She was in the Super Bowl?
She was, yes. She actually went to the Super Bowl, But she got to be part of the dancers that were on stage as part of this Motley Crue thing, right? And so, of course, I was a little more tuned into it because I wanted to see if I could see her. And, God, just listening, like, his voice is so brutal now. You know what I mean? And it's like,
I've heard it.
And you wonder if, like, there's situations where like, I really don't want to do this, but I owe so much money. I'm going to make so much money on this reunion tour that I'm just going to shove myself back out there again.
I mean, just seeing your bank numbers go up every time you do a show by, you know, not six digits. I don't know how much they would make these days, but someone like Crue, it's almost like they're leaving a lot of money on the table if they just walk away. So it's, I guess it's that pull of, you know, first of all, are you in the hole? Do you have to make up for something? Maybe you have bad gambling debts. Who knows? or you still owe your record label. I hope that's not the case at this point for them.
Right.
But I've heard some brutal stories where people, like companies own you for life, basically.
Yeah, right.
Or if you just want to make as much before you go out because you know afterwards, you're just going to want to sit around and not worry about money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like for you, making a living with music, like I guess people we should talk about how we met, all that stuff.
Sure.
So was it a Craigslist ad? I know we talked about this.
It was. I remember it vividly.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
It's so foggy in my head.
So I remember because I was trying to make this original band work, because in my 20s, that was the dream. That was the vision, to be able to have original music out there and have people listen to it and like it and want to purchase it and hear you play it. And I had been in kind of a hybrid cover original band, and then Stealing Seconds was the name of the original band, where I was like, okay, I really want to try to make this happen just with originals this time. Mm-hmm. And I had a guitar player, and he was kind of flaking a little bit, and I was like, I really need a great guitar player who can sing. And so at the time, Craigslist was pretty prominent place still to find talent, right? Yep. And so I remember vividly, I was scrolling through, and I see your ad come up, and you were doing Surfing with the Alien.
Oh, that video.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this dude? I'm like, holy shit, if I could get this dude. And so I remember writing you, and you were like, well, I put that out there, and I really kind of having second thoughts. I really don't want to get anything, but hey, I might be willing to fill in, and I was like, cool, if you could just fill in for this show, because it was this big show at Bogart's at the time, and I was like, I just, I got to get through this show. And
Bogart's.
Yeah, Bogart's was,
Apple Valley, right?
Apple Valley, yep.
Okay. Played there a few times.
And I was so thrilled when you had come on board just to even fill in. I tell this story to people all the time. I don't want to necessarily need to go too deep in the weeds, but I gave you the songs, and they were really shitty recordings. It was just real basic stuff. And I was like, hey, if you could, rehearse these songs and be ready for the show. I think the show was in 2 or 3 weeks. And you called me after 5 days. You're like, if you want to rehearse, I'm ready. I'm like, there's no way this dude's ready. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I had the songs, and I think it was just me. Might have been the bass player too. But I was like, okay, let's, what do you want to start with? And you named one of the songs. I think it was a song called Killer C, if I remember right.
I think so, yeah.
And I was like, okay, seems pretty confident. Maybe he knows just this one song. Maybe he's really busted on this one song. And we started, and it was flawless. And it was every solo was perfect. And you didn't even have sheet music up. You weren't even looking at any reference. It was you just were let's go. And I was like, how in the world? He must have spent all his time on that one song. So I'm like, how about this song? Perfect. Nailed. Amazing. Next song. Perfect. Nailed. Amazing. And I was like, this is insane. I have to have this guy in the band. And I just begged and pleaded for you to stay as long as you possibly could.
Well, you made it easy to stay because you guys were all pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you, me, and Rock were a good 3, It's like a triple threat.
Yeah.
And then, after I started booking shows and, we even got in the studio once, it's just it was a really fun thing. And I always tell people that we were climbing. Every show we were getting tighter and better. And then we did the Battle of the Bands of some sort, right? To open for somebody.
It was a Basilica block party Battle of the Bands. I think it was to play on an opening stage at the Basilica block party, if I remember right.
So it wasn't to open for a big band.
I don't think so.
You know what I'm thinking of is Marcy Playground. We
yes.
opened for them,
yes.
but we had to supply the gear and stuff.
Correct.
So this wasn't that. But I remember we lost by I think we were second place or something.
Yes.
But that really just broke me, I think. I don't know why. Because my whole life, every time I do a talent show or anything, I always could tell when I'm in a band that should have won. I know it seems biased when you're in the band, but we were the best band that night.
Yeah.
And we lost. And it was oh man, maybe I believe too much in I don't know, hints from the universe or something. But I was just plus I was really into that stuff at the time. But I just feel after that, I don't know, like it's hard to say what really just put out the fire in me. You know?
Yeah.
I think a part of it is because I was so uncommitted at first, and that's the way I was for like a lot of bands that I've been in. So I always like dip my toe, but we had such momentum and then it just felt like there was like nowhere else to go after that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, no. And I felt very much the same way. Like not long after, we had played a show, like, and things had still gone well, even after you left. Like, we got this guy named Matt Benassi in, and things are still going well. We got to open for Vertical Horizon once.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I remember the last show, Matt Benassi's favorite band was Dada.
Okay.
And we got to open for Dada at the Fine Line.
Wow. Great guitar player in that band. Yeah.
Amazing. And he even used our guitar player's amp.
Okay.
And so he was just so tickled, right?
I'd be stoked.
And I got done with that show. And all at once, and then we had just had, my wife and I had just had our son. And all at once, like just the vibe, the vibration, it just sort of felt like it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter how well we play. This is going to be the ceiling.
You felt
right?
it, yeah.
Yeah, and I just kind of felt like there's really no pathway to where I was hoping to take this. And so at that point, I just folded it up.
Really?
And I just said, I'm just going to spend time with my wife and my kid. I'm going to raise my son. I'm going to play a few solo acoustic shows here and there. But then that wasn't fulfilling. And so I just stopped for a while. And it was just like, that was, like you said, something felt like the vibration just didn't feel there, like it was there anymore.
Yeah.
And I just had to put it away.
Man.
Yeah.
So you could just sense it. So what made you kind of feel like, because I mean, opening for bands like Vertical Horizon and Dada, that's a good level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're playing in front of these big crowds. You're like, I always dreamt about this. But then you might think in your head, how do we become the Dadas?
That's exactly right.
And probably at the year that this happened, you probably noticed a decline in that being possible. Because I think when you first started out, it seemed pretty possible to be a big deal in this state, at least.
Right.
And then to make that jump over still seemed like it's something you could do back then.
Right.
Did you feel like, you know, there's no, like you said, no pathway to just get to the next level? What would the next level have been in your opinion?
I think the next level, like I always looked at like local legends like GB Layton or Tim Mahoney as like the next level, right? Where
the Mick Sterlings of the world.
Yes.
Just, yeah.
Where we could play a headline show of originals and we'd fill a room up and, you know,
just with your name.
Yes.
Yeah.
And people be clamoring to like get the next album we put out. And, you know, it wasn't even about like, we'll tour regionally and make a bunch of money. It was like, I just want to be able to like say, we're going to play at Bunkers or something and have the place be filled just to see us.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the decline of the vibration, is that I worked so hard to get these opportunities because I always thought, all I got to do is get in front of people. All I got to do is get in front of these people, right? Yeah. And then you were in front of the Vertical Horizon crowd. And then you were in front of like this crowd, the Marcy Playground crowd. You're like, that's it, right? And then you play the Fine Line again on your own night, and it'd be like pulling teeth to get 30 people there.
Yes.
And it's like, it's just not happening, man. Whatever. It's just not going to happen.
It felt like blood from a stone. It's like, it just can't, no matter what we do. And we were, I'd say, at the top of our game around the Marcy Playground. Everything was just clicking. And if you can't make it after that, I guess you either gamble and try for the 10-year plan and say, hey, I'm just going to keep at it no matter what, because it does pay off sometimes. I guess No Doubt never got signed until like 10 years in.
Wow.
Which is crazy, because anyone who saw Gwen Stefani at any point must have been like, whoa, she's a star. But
right.
I guess I have to go look at some old footage. Maybe she like wore a hat and like didn't have the moves or something. I don't know. But it's tough. It's a tough business to keep going when you're not seeing any like return. Mm-hmm. Although if you were to go years back when you were like a teenager and go, hey, you're going to be opening up for these big bands, maybe that would have been like the dream for you at the time.
Right. You would have signed me up.
Yeah.
You know?
But it didn't end there for you. Because I remember during the COVID days, you started doing, I think, stuff online, some acoustic stuff.
Yep.
You did a few shows or?
Yeah. Well, I realized that I still really did miss it a lot. And then everyone started doing these like living room sessions during COVID. And I was like, man, I really miss playing. Because it's all about like performing and connecting with people for me. And I was like, hey, maybe this is a way that I can be in my house. I can play all these old Stealing Second songs and Consensual songs from my prior band of that. And maybe people will like listen and have a good memory or remember when they used to go out and see us in the clubs. Or I just wanted to play for people. Yeah. That's all. Right. And so cool. I started doing that. And then as things kind of started coming back around, I had this urge to still, like, I really wanted to play. Like, I felt like I really missed it. And I never really stopped missing it, but I really started to miss it around COVID for whatever reason. And I
once it gets taken away, now you really want it. Like, I had it good before.
Yeah. And so then I had hooked up with these guys that were doing kind of like a 90s-ish cover band, and they were a lot of them were a little bit newer in the scene, like didn't have a lot of the connections or whatever, and so it was hard to find like good gigs. And I played like one gig with them, and then the bass player in Consensual from back in the day, so he was going to start this 90s tribute band, and he was going to do it sort of like in the vein of Hairball, where we'll do costumes and we'll do all the genres, and it's going to be like a really cool thing. And we'll play like twice a month max. And I was like, that's
how they get you.
Yeah. It's like, that sounds kind of good. It sounds like a good compromise. Like I can, and we could probably play a couple nice clubs and yeah, that sounds fun. And so I really started out just for like, hey, I'll find that camaraderie again, because you know, when you're in a band, it's like that built-in camaraderie that I think pro athletes talk about in the locker room. It just,
definitely, you
connect with people and it feels good and it's fun. So I thought
you
that's
belong somewhere.
Yes.
It's just a good feeling. Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to reconnect with that music scene, because I've always said like the music scene people, all the people that I've met in my travels in music are like the best people I've ever met. And you come across people from other walks of life, and it always just seems like the vibration doesn't feel right. Like you always feel like there's something catty or there's something off or whatever. Musicians, man, I've always felt like this big fraternity that's all accepting.
Yeah.
And I've always loved that. I missed it. And so when I started doing it again, then all of a sudden this 90s tribute band, which we call Gen X Jukebox, like just started exploding, and to the point where now it's like in the summers we're playing 11 shows a month all of a sudden, and it's like it got nuts. You know?
guys hit at the right time. Like, I think it was 8 years ago I started, subbing in for the Heart Tribute Band. And we didn't know tributes were going to get huge.
Yes.
And for the first time ever in my life, I did something at the right time. Because my thrash band when I was a kid were getting big right during grunge. It's like we had no hope, man. We were like playing Metallica type stuff, and, grunge is huge. And then my whole life it's always been, oh, you guys should have started this 5 years ago. We had ballrooms full of people. And then when I was in a country band, it was the ballroom thing was over already. And I'm like, man, so this tribute thing was just like, whoa. For once we struck when it was hot, and we could have played 11 gigs a month if we wanted to. It's just we were turning things down, which is crazy. So you had a 90s thing before the 90s thing.
Yes.
Okay. I was confused. I thought you got right into it.
Yeah. I had it. It was like about a year before the other 90s thing.
Gotcha. Yep. So 90s were calling.
Yeah, they were, for sure. Sure.
And that's perfect for you, because ever since I knew you, Third Eye Blind, that kind of style, would you call that mid 90s, later 90s type?
Yeah. I mean, it's, it was, I love that. Like I kind of call it like the pop rock vein, like I loved Tonic, Gin Blossoms.
I still love Tonic.
Oh, they're great.
It's criminal. Like the people only know maybe one or two songs, but it's like, I don't know. Was it Sugar was their next album?
Sugar was awesome album. Yep.
Yeah, the first 5 songs are just like amazing. Epic. And I'm like, nobody knows about these songs.
I know. Like, I think maybe we might have, I don't know if you were in it or not. We used to cover
Future Says Run?
No, we used to cover Knock Down Walls.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I love that too.
It's one of the, I was in a very selfish group called MG3. I kind of copied like John Mayer 3, but we played Knock Down Walls all the time, and it's just rocking.
It's rocking as hell.
Yeah, and I got to see them at the State Fair with Goo Goo Dolls, I think, and they played that song, and I just remember feeling like this is freaking intense, And it's a band called Tonic. They're not really like super heavy metal or anything, but they sounded heavy that night.
Yeah.
So great singing. Just everything. Great songwriting.
Awesome songwriting.
I wish more people knew more about Tonic.
Me too. And I love that vein of bands. Yeah. And then this, what was cool about Gen X Jukebox was then we did all these genres. So I started, I got to play the alternative stuff. I got to play Pearl Jam and all that kind of stuff. But then it was like I never liked country, but we wanted to do a certain amount of country songs, and I started to kind of like country and the harmonies with country.
It grows on you.
Yeah, and then we started doing like some of the hip hop and the rap, and then I started like just learning a little bit of different styles, how to play some of this stuff, and I don't know, it felt really cool. Like I really felt like I truly embraced and loved and enjoyed something in all genres of music, you know?
Yeah, that's looked down upon when you're younger, but as you get older, you look like you're a lot more flexible. Like you could join a band and not just play country like a heavy metal guy anymore. You know, you have the ability to hold back when you need to. I was in a band once where we did country, but we also did like disco stuff. So it was like you had to change in order to fit in the right way. And it makes you a more flexible musician. I really thought it was a education.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're talking 90s country or the new stuff that has kind of like rap beats in it and stuff?
No, it's all 90s country. So,
Okay.
I mean, we play, you know, Chattahoochee and Friends in Low Places and Tim McGraw and, you know, Shania, all that kind of
Tim
stuff.
McGraw was so big at one point. We used to do, I think, 3 of his tunes. We did like Alan Jackson. We did all these, you know, like you said, Chattahoochee, right? But yeah, Garth always went over really well. Who else? There was bands like Little Texas that had some really great stuff. So there was a time where everybody was line dancing just out of nowhere. It's like, where did this come from? This is bizarre. Why are they putting sand on the floor? This is weird.
I know, it is crazy.
So you guys are I guess Gen X, you have to stick with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Duh. So like I was thinking like the newer country kind of gets a little bit like blurred with some like hip hop type stuff, but you guys are doing the real instruments and everything.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
mean,
cool.
we have tracks, of course, and stuff too, but like, I don't know, like a lot of times we'll try to add some instrumentation into it. Like Andy, he plays keys really well. He's our guitar player. He plays keys and he'll do synth parts,
Cool.
you know, and we'll try to replicate as much as possible with all of us, but you know, we obviously do supplement with some tracks too, just to fill it out. But
if you're in like a dance type, you know, where people are going to be moving to your music, that seems to be the way we went that way too for a while. We're more old school though. Like our drummer had this idea way back in the day before anybody was really doing too much tracks. And he's like, you know, people are using ADATs and stuff on stage with like the cassette thing. It's like a VHS tape. He's like, but I've seen bands where the tape gets eaten during the show. So you got to find something more dependable. So he started using those mini discs, those tiny like hard discs that you put in, and I would make the tracks at my studio and he would put it in and have one click to his ear and then send the other out to the front of house. And I'm kind of proud to say that we were doing this like 5 years before a lot of bands picked up on it, but it really filled the gaps because we wouldn't use it to replace guitar parts or anything, but just like intros, like, you know, if you're playing Grooves in the Heart or whatever, it's cool to have that intro.
Right.
So you guys kind of doing the same thing?
Yep. That's
Okay.
very much how we're doing it.
Like a keyboard part or a percussion part here and there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And some of those synth beats are just really hard to replicate with like acoustic drums. Like we'll cover that in, and it is mostly like the hip hop and that stuff. Like any or like a Shania. You know, we don't have fiddles.
Yeah.
You know, so like
So
we track that stuff. Anything we just or trumpets. Like when we play tub thumping.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, cool.
We don't have a horn section, so we track the horns. You know, stuff.
It'd
like
be
that.
nice to be at a level where you could just like, bring the horn section
I
on
know.
this tour. You know,
Right.
That's got to be so crazy. So yeah, I mean, seeing like pictures of you and videos of you playing and seeing this whole packed crowd because, like you said, you guys bring them in. Do you feel like you reached a point where you could say this is like a dream come true, or is it always going to be like a little bit adjacent to what you really wanted?
That's a really good question. Because I've kind of realized this about myself. I think at the end of the day, what I really wanted out of like music and bands is like just to entertain people and connect with people and like make people feel good and make people feel like the sense of a community during a show.
Okay.
And if it's my music and I wrote it, that feels really, really good, right? But even if I didn't, I still am accomplishing kind of that overall goal. And as you know, like you do your original stuff and you got like, 20 people who care in the audience and it's thinned out and, it's like, I'm not really reaching or impacting anybody. But then you play, the Carver County Fair, and it's front to back filled with people, and they're all having such a great time. You start to feel like, I know I didn't write this. I know that, but I'm replicating it, and you're still feeling the same way you do when you see that artist.
You're facing the crowd. You're not facing the band. Like you're still creating that music that people are loving. I get that. That's when you say like you do your own music and only 20, like they use it to go to the bathroom. It's their bathroom break song. It's your song.
Right.
That's very common. I mean, it's one of those things where you get a song placed in a commercial. The next thing you know, you're selling out theaters with one song. I just heard the story about Listen to Your Heart. Or no, what's it called? It Must Have Been Love by Roxette. Did you know, this is kind of taking a detour, but did you know it started off as like a Christmas song?
What? No.
Yeah, I just saw the story last night, and it reminded me of how sometimes we write our stuff and we just kind of put it away. It's like, it didn't do much. We'll just put it in the computer, forget about it. Well, I guess they were like, Roxette, you're never going to get out of Sweden unless you write like a song that appeals to a lot of people. So why don't you try to write a Christmas song? So they wrote it, and it was like called the same thing. It's just they added Christmas words in it or whatever. And it did okay, I guess, in Sweden and Germany or something like that. And all of a sudden they just kind of forgot about it. They just sort of put it in the back burner. And then their Look Sharp album came out, and they got huge off of like the Look and those songs. Do you guys play that song?
No.
Oh, it's a great song. Great guitar part.
It is a great guitar part.
And then out of nowhere, some guy's like, hey, our record label's doing this thing for some movie called 3000. Do you guys want to be on it? Do you have a ballad or something that you can offer? It's like, well, we're on tour. We don't have time to create something, but we have this old Christmas tune we could use for it. So they retooled it, took out the Christmas stuff, and the movie ended up being Pretty Woman, which went on to, gross $500 million. And so that was a song they were just going to throw away, basically. So it's just like you never know, not that any of our songs will do that, but you never know what life it'll eventually take or whose ear it'll eventually cross.
Yeah, well, and especially nowadays, like, it's so different now. And like, in a way, like, you're such amazing proof of it, too. Like, you just put content out there, and people can randomly pick up on it, and then it's like, boom, it can just explode without any fancy slick production, without any label saying we got to get this in the right PD's hands at this radio station. It's like, my son loves this guy named Boy with Uke. You ever heard of him?
No.
He's just a dude who played like a ukulele. And he was so like embarrassed of like what his friends would think of him that he used to wear a mask.
Oh, wow.
And he recorded it with like this mask. And so it was, again, like basically just him and a ukulele and GarageBand. And he started doing these songs and put them on, TikTok, put them on YouTube, whatever. And all of a sudden, like, they started to take off and virally just be huge. And he didn't remove the mask for a good, like, year plus or whatever. Because, again, he didn't want to go to school and have people know that he wrote this song because he was, like, nervous and shy about it. And now we're going to go see him at, like, a theater in St. Paul.
This success story, and it's like a modern day success story. Mm-hmm. So was it just like a black mask or a bag or something?
It was like a white, like almost like not like a Jason mask, but just like a white plain mask that just covered his, covered his facial features basically.
Kind of like Buckethead, but without the bucket.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah,
yeah. I would hate to like get known for having to wear a mask. Like if you were in Slipknot, every show you're in this rubber mask, and they would play these outdoor festivals, and they would lift up their mask, and sweat would just pour out like a waterfall. It's just like, oh my God.
Didn't think that fully through when they started that.
They were just interviewing Corey Taylor, and he's talking about how touring and stuff just damaged him. His body. He said he can't walk without pain now, and it's crazy. So it's good that this kid or whatever took off the mask eventually.
Yeah, he did.
So he's free. Okay, that's cool. He was not like obnoxiously like off-putting or anything.
No, he just looked like a normal dude. Normal dude.
I was worried he was going to be Elephant Man and have to put it back on.
Yeah. Oh, and another guy. This is another example of this. So there's a guy called I think it's Marcin.
Yeah.
And he does these crazy
I know that
acoustic things. Yeah. And like he does all the tapping and blah, 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 right? And he's, I think, from somewhere overseas, but he got on America's Got Talent.
Yep.
And he did that. He had his, couple of minutes of fame. And I've seen lots of people go on shows like that and then just disappear into nothingness, right?
Yep.
But he, through his TikTok channels or whatever, he got big enough where now he's going on a little North American tour. But it's like, you don't have to do that old route.
Yeah.
Like you used to,
Yep.
you know, like the Beatles would do, you know what I mean? It's like, and now it's just, I think it gives so much more people hope that they can just write and put something out there and maybe somebody will like it. And I think it's kind of beautiful in a way.
I see it happen these days with like the most unlikely group. You're like, they were just playing in their basement and all of a sudden somebody, the right person saw it and just forwarded it to this other person. But back, you know, when we were up and coming, it felt like you had to go through the whole rock band route, which is kissing a lot of ass to the higher ups and signing your life away and I don't know, worshiping Satan. I don't know what you had to do.
Right.
I never did it. Yeah. But as far as contracts go and then they own you, and I didn't realize that every time you got a limousine ride, every time you got a good dinner, you're paying for it.
Yeah.
Plus probably interest on top of that. So you get done with the tour, you go, wow, that was a great tour, man. How rich are we? They're like, well, you still owe $10 or $10 million or whatever. You
right.
know? Did you ever have to sign contracts in anything in your past? Or?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, we have contracts for each of our shows now, but like nothing like what
Binding?
you're referencing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that makes me nervous because we signed a contract once to say we were signed. It was the biggest thing back when we were younger to say you were signed. Right. And it just dissolved shortly afterwards. So I feel like a lot of musicians were basically held hostage in a weird way to their younger selves who made the decision to go ahead with things. But then do you feel bad if they did reach the famous level because they at least got to get there somehow?
Right. Right.
Depends what you're willing to trade for it, I guess.
Yeah. Now, I have a question for you that I think has been super fascinating to me is how did you go from starting a TikTok channel and putting your first video on there and being like, oh, maybe people will like this, to having, you know, over 1 million followers on it? Like, how does that process go?
Oh, boy. Well, I avoided TikTok, thank goodness. I went right to YouTube because it was around way before TikTok, you know?
Yeah.
But I would just put up videos of my students because I'd be like, oh my gosh, my 10-year-old student played Eruption really, really well. And I would post it on YouTube and I just did some goofy things. And it was called my school name back then. It wasn't even called Art of Guitar.
Yeah.
And then one day I had this idea because I had a student who wanted to partner up with me and start like an online website for guitar lessons. And I thought, what a good way to promote it would be to have like a series on YouTube where I just, I don't know, play like my favorite guitar players and talk about what makes them different. So it was called the Artist Series, basically. And I chose Kirk Hammett, and he and I filmed it, and it was okay. You know, we put it out. It got a few hundred views back then. I think I had like 500 subscribers. And next thing I knew, like I parted ways with the guy because I realized that I work best at like 3 a.m. and I can't get anybody who can do like stay with me because they're all like, they have day jobs and they have lives, you know? So when I was by myself, I just thought that idea, I got to stick with that idea. So I kept at it. I kept trying different things. And next thing I know, I had one video completely take off. And it was the one where I admitted that I screwed up Enter Sandman. Because I had a video before that called You're Probably Playing Enter Sandman Wrong. And I taught it wrong. It's so ironic. And I was just like, I could either just delete it and like disappear from the, from YouTube forever.
Yeah.
Or I could just put like a retraction video and say, I'm sorry, I screwed up. And strangely, that's the video that took off. Wow. I remember being in Barnes & Noble the next day, going through my comments. And instead of having 2 or 3 like I used to, I had hundreds that day. And it was just like, I thought everybody was going to just quit the website. Oh, this guy's a fraud, blah, blah, blah. Instead, it was, dude, I've never seen anyone like fess up like that before. It's like, I'm subscribing. And after that, it was a snowball. People started going back and watching my older videos, which were the Artist Series videos. So it's like the same thing we just talked about. You never know where your work is going to end up. And people think, I'm just going to give up. Nobody's seeing what I'm doing. But you have a back catalog now of all your stuff that people can discover for the first time. And this is perfect proof of it. This happened last month. I had a video where I did 80s solos. My favorite solos are from the 80s. And it was a Vito Bratta solo for Wait. Do you know White Lion? Wait. And the video itself did okay. I had a whole bunch of other people, YouTubers playing too, but it didn't do the best. I was kind of embarrassed because I'm like, I got all these cool people involved and it got, for me, 20,000 seemed kind of small for views. But I put it out on Facebook, just the one segment, and it got 500,000 views in like a week. And it's an old video.
Yeah.
So that gave me hope. I'm like, even when I'm an old man, I could resurrect some old stuff that was cool. Like that'd be like you finding some old originals and just putting it out there, and all of a sudden, bam! For some reason, it takes off.
I do think about that a lot.
Will you do it? Like, would you go back in and re-record, or would you?
100%. I think about it all the time. Like, I want to go re-record stuff from back in the day, and like, it's funny because I have these weird little fantasies in my head. Like K-Fan, like iHeartMedia, they somehow had gotten restricted from using any popular songs like during their segments. Cause like,
really?
Like the morning show used to do like a duel of the decades, and they'd play like a snippet from a 90s song and a snippet from an 80s song.
Yeah.
And
they took that away.
Yes. And they could no longer play anything that was like, I suppose like ASCAP protected or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so then they started using like little local artist snippets or AI generated music or whatever. But I was
shit.
I thought, wouldn't it be fun if like I just set my music in and said, hey, you can use this as bumper music. And then they played one and they were like, who's that? That was on the air. That's actually kind of ripping. And then they like announce it, and then people like go and look it up and like, damn, that's a really good song. And then it all of a sudden gets put on some social media channel, and then it explodes, and all of a sudden people want to hear the band that recorded it play it. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Suddenly you're calling old bandmates, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah, we gotta play a concert,
That's funny.
But that's because of the landscape we're in today, that you actually feel like that could be a reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Are you going to put some music in there?
I don't know. Maybe someday.
Okay.
I keep forgetting to do it.
Well, you could also go the route my friends went, where they just submit music to this general website that like gives music to movies and commercials. And next thing you know, you're watching TV and you hear your song.
That is one of the coolest feelings, by the way. So that actually did happen to me.
Oh, really?
So back in the day in Consensual, that band, that was my first original band.
That's a great name, by the way, even though it's very, you know what I mean?
It's
like,
a weird name.
It's perfect for like playing nightclubs in Minnesota back in the day, the Iron Horse or something.
Right. But so we had, at the time, there was a company called Tinderbox.
Oh, okay.
And they were, what they would do is basically take your album and submit it to college radio, and then hope that like college radio picks it up, and then maybe some other major market hears it and wants to, whatever. But then I think as part of the deal, they would submit it to those type of placement.
Yeah, placement. Yep.
And I remember I used to like to watch the show House Hunters. And I remember clear as day, I was just sitting on my couch, and this was long after that band had been done, right? And I was sitting on the couch watching House Hunters, and I had this song called Go Ahead. Still one of my favorite songs original songs I've written. So I know what it's like to fly. And all of a sudden I hear the intro of Go Ahead.
Whoa.
As they're like finding their new house. I'm like, hold on.
Whoa.
I'm like, what? And
did it take a while to register that it was you?
Yes, it did. I was like, wait, that sounds like Go Ahead. I'm like, that's me playing that. That's my acoustic like at the beginning.
Wow.
And you want to hear something crazy? Okay, so there is, apparently my wife found this, some website that if money gets sent to you and it goes unclaimed, it sits in this pool somewhere. Okay. And it's on a web, and you have to, I don't remember what the website is, but you can go to this website and see if you're listed.
Some kind of escrow account or something?
Yes. That. And so my wife looked her name up, nothing. She looked my name up, there's like $100 bucks in there. And we come to find out, because I realized I never did get paid for any of the placement that I got, right?
Right.
And I think when I looked at the timeline of when that check came, I think it was a payment because I had, the songwriting credit on that song.
Sure.
I think it was a payment for that placement in that TV show.
House Hunters?
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if you can go back and watch that episode. If it's
I have it saved. I have it recorded somewhere. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be weird if musicians all around the world like heard what you just said and they like looked themselves up? They're like, oh, they've been playing my song in Japan for 10 years. I'm rich.
$3,000.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I guess you never know. You gotta look into that. Do you know the name of the website? Okay.
I cannot remember it.
That's pretty cool, man. I know. Yeah. I always wonder how much money is just floating out there unclaimed.
Oh, I know. I'm sure it's millions.
Yeah, maybe billions.
Yeah.
So you're doing the Gen X Jukebox thing now, and that could go on forever? Or what are you thinking? You're going to have to make the leap to the next decade or something.
Well, we talk about that a lot too, because the age we're at, like we're able to be really energetic still. But we talk about this a lot with like 80s and 70s tribute bands.
Yeah.
Like that audience that loves those bands are probably 60 to 70. They're not going out as much, right?
It's wild to think about 60, 70.
And so the timing is good now because 90s is starting to come back into the point where like you're hearing it in commercials, you're hearing it all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And the people that love the 90s are around 40 to
Sure.
55. The kids now are graduated or they can fend for themselves. Now it's time for mom and dad to go back out and have a little fun again.
Yeah, relive their old days, their old heyday.
Yep, and they've got the disposable income now to, spend money on some drinks and buy some tickets to things or whatever. Like that's the demo that everybody wants to get out.
The empty nesters.
Yes. And so there's a window where that will be great. Now, when those people get to be, 60-ish again, then I think it drops off precipitously to the people that will come out to the venues, have a few drinks, have fun.
You have to go to their nursing home. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. So I feel like we all kind of agree that we feel like it's sort of a 10-year max window now we can really capitalize. And then we always joke that like, well, Gen X does kind of cover the 2000s. So if we ever had to pivot, it can just be the music of the 2000s and we can see how long we can milk it.
Yeah.
But I think in our brains, just the ages we are, we kind of feel like, let's give this as good of a run as we can for like another 10 years if we can do it. And then just kind of see where things end up.
That's a great outlook. I mean, a 10-year window makes you feel really confident, unless something crazy happens. It's like you could keep making music and I don't know. Maybe by then there'll be holograms on stage. I just never, I can't predict, I always try. I'm always way off of the future. I always thought people were going to be in the VR world by now. And I have the VR stuff, but after a while you want to take it off and do something real again. So I think that's always going to be calling us. So
I agree.
Hopefully we always have the opportunity to actually play on stage and have people appreciate it, Yeah, I get confused because when we start hitting the 2000s, my brain just goes, what was big? I don't even know. Because I mix that with like the 2010s even. And the 2020s, I don't even know what's big.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I think that's going to be the last pure window is creeping into the 2000s possibly.
Yep, I would agree.
What rock bands was it pop punk type stuff like coming full circle around 2000?
Sort of like there's like, I know Sum 41 was kind of breaking around then. I think Avril Lavigne was starting to get big around then. Nickelback was starting to really hit around then.
Okay, now you're bringing me to the right place in my head. Okay. Because after that, there was the My Chemical Romances and stuff. So a little before them, I think there's a sweet spot that a lot of people will like know the music. Because if you played Complicated by Avril Lavigne, a lot of people are still going to know that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
She still looks good, by the way.
Yeah, she does.
But so I forgot the configuration of your band. Is it like a 6-piece type thing?
6-piece, yep.
Okay, that's a good amount.
Yep.
How many girls versus guys in the band?
So we got one girl, and then
got to change that.
Yeah, well, so we used to have two.
Okay.
And then it's interesting because we always had two to start. And then we had one that was like the grungy girl and she'd sing Hole and she'd sing Alanis, right? And then we had the girl that was the pop girl and she'd sing Britney.
Sure.
And she'd do like Christina Aguilera and whatever. And then we'd have the grungy kind of guy who would do like Pearl Jam and Metallica.
I thought that would be you.
No, I don't do that. Okay. And he would do the country, and then I would kind of do like the pop rock stuff like Third Eye Blind, and then I'd also do the rap stuff like Vanilla Ice and House of Pain and whatever.
There's a little rapping in Third Eye Blind, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. People don't realize that, but there's a lot of kind of rap vibes and a lot of Third Eye Blind music. But anyway, so then through some different configurations, we had two girls again, and then one ended up quitting because the schedule was just like, too much, right? Yeah. And so we were going to try to find a replacement, but our girl is so charismatic and so good that it's like, it almost kind of sucks to like take her off the stage.
Sure.
And then also, what I've come to realize is there's not nearly as many big 90s female artists as you would think. There's Shania, there's Alanis, and there's, some of the hip hop R&B stuff, like TLC, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I was actually having trouble finding songs to supplement both girls.
Interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. And so we just decided, hey, Kitty will be, fine covering like 18 songs a night, and the costumes will work out, and it was way better than like trying to give another girl like 7 and then she's not doing anything the rest of the night, and it's kind of weird.
Hand her a tambourine.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, let's just have the one girl cover all that stuff. And then it was also nice because when the other guy had quit, the new guy didn't play anything. He just sung. So that necessitated me being on stage more, playing more guitar.
Sure.
So I did less costume changes, but it actually like kind of went into this really nice, settled in area where we all felt pretty good. Like, I don't need to sing lead vocals as much. I love singing my background vocals. I love doing my harmonies. I love playing rhythm guitar. And, Andy does his thing on lead guitar. And then we've got our girl and our guy singer that do a lot of the costume changes. And it just has kind of worked out great.
I noticed that if you're in a band and just the front people costume change, it usually works out fine. Because I played with this, it was like an all-star band a little bit ago, and the main component of the band was the band Pop Rocks. And the girl is just unbelievable. Like, she's a star, I think. She could do that if she wanted to. But the guys behind her just wear white, basically. Yep. And then she changes, and just like, people don't care if the whole band doesn't suddenly look like Kiss. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting dynamic, but you know just as well as I do how much work it is to keep a band together. So you keep everyone happy, have all the parts filled. And I think the only reason I was talking about 2 girl singers is because I was thinking of harmonizing. How does that work out? Do you do most of the harmonizing?
Do most of the harmonies, yeah.
So you do a lot of falsetto sometimes? Okay.
Sometimes, yep.
If you could do that, you're fine.
Yeah.
Like in my old band, our guitar player could do the high falsetto and be okay. But usually 2 girl singers is like ideal for that kind of thing, but you've got the voice for it.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because we joke about it because the biggest thing we wanted 2 girls for the longest time was Spice Girls.
Okay.
Right? But now I do the other like Spice Girl part.
You just put a wig on?
Yeah, I don't even do. I just sit there and I do. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
Nice.
And then like for Ironic, for Alanis, I can do the high harmony, but I realize it sounds just as good if I go down the octave and I do it the same harmony just in my range, and no one notices. It sounds good.
You don't see any like people in the audience like doesn't seem right. It's weird when you go an octave lower and you nail it. It's like the frequency can sometimes sound like an illusion where it still sounds high. Yeah, it's a weird thing.
And I do like
audio illusion.
I've done some of the high harmonies and they work out fine. But yeah, we just kind of figured I'm able to cover almost all of them.
It's good.
Pretty well. And so like we're like, hey, yeah, let's roll with it.
Yeah, it's the thing about people overlook the power and the necessity of backup vocals. Because when the band I joined, it's like, I'm always focusing on my instrument. And then when like, can you hit this part? I can do it if it's like a smaller thing or whatever. But I just joined this duo with my friend, and I have to sing like Kiss backups now. And I'm like, I didn't know I had to develop this mid-range to high range that's half falsetto, half real. And if you get that strong, you could do a lot of stuff, but you're always on the verge of cracking at first. So you probably had to figure all that out over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely know where your kind of sweet spot is and when you can go for it, when you got to kind of like flutter into it a little bit and,
test yourself, like stand away from the mic and then come in. There's all those tricks. So.
People don't realize really how much goes into like all the components of a band sounding good. Yeah. Like, it sounds good, but you don't really know why. And it's all these little tiny, like fine details.
Things that people would take for granted because they don't even know you have to do it. Like if you go and the sound is great, you don't realize the sound guy showed up early, which rarely happens. But there's a lot of people working behind the scenes and the band too. Like, hey, this one part, we need to fix this harmony. And just little details like that actually equal the upper crust of the better bands in the cities,
Yeah, absolutely.
I get kind of mad when I do these videos where I like fix this band, I do it just as an educational thing. I'm not ripping on bands, but I'm like, the kick drum's wrong on the song and it feels weird, And a lot of people who comment like, who freaking cares, dude? They're at a bar, they're getting paid, everyone's happy, the bar owner's happy, they have all these people there. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about.
No.
I'm talking about those invisible details that aren't invisible to people that are in the know, but it's like, I think those are so important. Can't overlook that stuff, man. It's like, I don't know, part of the recipe in my opinion.
Well, I the biggest proof to me was our male singer had to miss a show, and we're like, I said it's gonna be fine. I'll just cover his stuff, right? But no one knew the harmonies, and so I'm like, it's gonna be okay. I'll just cover his songs, and we'll just, if you can do the harmonies, do them. If not, whatever. And we did them, and without the harmonies, I thought it just sounded so awful.
Oh, man.
And I was like, you got to have that. And I was talking to another guy in a different band in the city that's pretty prominent. And he was talking about how he gets mad because they try to do harmonies, but the other guy in the band that does the harmonies with them doesn't really like learn or work on the part. He just kind of like fishes for a part. And it's like, so the common person might hear them doubling the same melody or the same harmony and not going up the fourth or whatever. And the lay person might hear it and be like, that doesn't really sound like the album. They don't really know why. But if they hit those harmonies perfectly, they'd be like, oh, that sounds so good.
Oh my God. When you see a band that they are nailing the harmonies, they're already on another level. Mm-hmm. Like I heard a Journey tribute band, just the beginning of Any Way You Want It, That's the Way You Need It. They all came in strong and I'm like, yes. One weak voice in there would have ruined that entire part. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
the work. So cool. We have 10 more years of your band, so we have a lot of chances to come see you
Let's
guys.
hope so.
What's the next gig if people are watching and they're local?
The next gig actually is going to be April 18th at Shakopee Bowl.
Ooh.
Yep. And then come May, that's when the train starts blowing through your town.
How many outdoor shows do you guys play?
All.
Yeah.
Like starting in May, they're all outdoor.
I told the singer of the Heart Band, I'm like, I hate outdoor because I hate hot weather with mosquitoes and I hate playing when I'm sweating.
Yes.
And she books all outdoor gigs.
I know.
Like, thanks, but we got to get gigs wherever we can.
But I'll tell you what, Mike, when you have a beautiful summer evening and the sun goes down and it's 11 o'clock and it's about 75 and you can just feel like that cool breeze coming through, there's nothing better, man.
You nailed it. We played, do you know Ziggy's by any chance?
Of course, yes.
So we used to be regulars at Ziggy's before they even opened their Hudson location or whatever. So we're in Stillwater. And they decided to play an outdoor one. And so we set up on these concrete stairs that led right to the water. And it was that exact feeling. It was like this openness in the air and you could just feel like people were having a good time. And then we played and we just all, a little buzzed towards the end and we're just smiling at each other. It's like, that's... In the end, all the complaining I do, I always end up going, most of the time. Sometimes it is hell. Most of the time, it's, oh God, I should shut my mouth because that was fun.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, like one of the best moments, and I love the summer. I love them. I hate being hot too, but like we played this massive campground complex called Camp Dells.
That's like a captive audience, right?
Yes.
They have
huge.
One thing to do in the night and it's to go see you guys.
And I remember the first time we ever booked that, I was like, what? We're playing a campground? Oh, Jesus, right? But then we did it. It was super fun. And then it became one of our favorite gigs because everybody, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
They're all there. And it's all people that are families, 40s, and the kids think you're the biggest rock star ever.
You're Kiss to them.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember we were playing this show last summer, and it was like in August, and summer's kind of winding down. And we always tend to close the show with Shine from Collective Soul. Kind of an emotional, good, feel-good, uplifting song, right?
You get the crowd to go, yeah.
Yeah, right. But anyway, so I do this whole big like lead into it, talking about how, like being all like, deep and connecting with them and everything. And there was this moment, right? It was a gorgeous, still night, just a little breeze coming off this huge lake that it's off of. And there's people as far as I could see, literally as far as I could see in this campground.
So it's like Woodstock for you.
It was absolutely. I mean, we're hundreds and hundreds of people just like, and it was dark. So like you can't see too far back. So all I could see was people. And then you smelled the campfires from all of the different areas coming in.
Oh, wow.
And you smell like people cooking stuff. And then, so it smelled summery. It felt summery. And we launched into the song. And then at one point we cut out. And it's just basically the drums and Andy playing like the kind of the lick on electric clean.
Sure.
And we have the crowd sing. And they all had phones up and they were doing it. And all I could see is a sea of lights. And as we're singing, Heaven Let Your Light Shine Down, right? And it's all these lights.
Yeah.
And then we crank back into it. And it felt like this big super rock star moment.
Yeah.
And it was just perfect.
Because it was a big rock star moment. Yeah.
And it was perfect. It just felt perfect. And it was just like one of those times where you're like, I can't imagine any place else right now being more fun than this.
Two things on that, because I know I'm going to forget. Did you know the original recording of that's a drum machine?
Oh, absolutely. You can tell so
You can.
vehemently that it is.
I was like, are you sure? Because maybe they have a really great drummer that's super. And then I heard the cymbal crash. It's like, oh, that's from like a Casio or something.
Yeah.
I guess Ed Roland, is that his name? It was a demo and they just kept
Yes.
it. So that's amazing.
Yes.
Also, I forgot to mention the whole Weezer thing that we did.
Oh, God, yes.
Because you mentioned the stadium thing.
Yes.
And then I wanted to say, yeah, well, I played a few stadiums and really most of the time you can only see the front and everyone in the back is just black or unless they have their phone out or whatever.
Right.
Then I realized you and I were both on stage with Weezer and experienced that. I have a picture from it somehow.
I do too somewhere.
Yeah, like back then we didn't have, I think I had a flip phone. So that must have been some sort of like Kodak Instacam or something. I don't
So
know
you
what
have
it
a
was.
picture from the stage?
I have 5 pictures from where I was out to the crowd.
Oh, you do?
So I have the people and they're all looking not at me. They're looking like, at the
Yeah.
band or whatever. And it was funny because like Rivers would just walk by me and I'm just like, this is really happening. This is bizarre.
It was surreal.
Yeah. And then I have one picture because I brought my ex, it was weird. My ex-girlfriend, my ex-fiance went there with me. We had just broken up like a week before. And she took a picture from the audience view. So I'll try to find them. I'll get them to you somehow. But
Yeah, that's cool.
that really happened. It's weird.
It was crazy. I remember how just strange that felt. I remember throwing a pick out when we were
did?
done
That's
because I was like,
awesome,
"This is
man.
you got to be the rock star. You got to be able to throw a pick out to somebody, And
You hit some girl right in the eye and she sued
Yeah.
you. It was bad.
yeah, that was fun. In the band, we've been talking a lot about just like kind of metaphysical stuff, like vibrations and how like there's common vibrations throughout the universe, and then when you're doing things that you're passionate about and you're doing things that like align with your vibration or whatever, then you start to manifest your success. And I think about you with your YouTube channel a lot with that. It's like you obviously have always loved this life. You're massively talented in this music field, right? And so you just kept pouring your heart into things that felt right and matched your vibration. And then all of a sudden, the universe rewards you and says, "Here, we're going to."
You're doing the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to push you along in this path. And some people have said like the phenomenon of deja vu is sort of like it's almost like an echo of a vibration from a different part of your life or a different, parallel universe almost. But it's like that weird phenomenon is almost like an indication that you're living in the right vibration.
Yeah. It's like this, it's a strange feeling of you're playing a role that you've done before and then it slowly fades away, which is so weird. It's like, it's a hint as like whenever I know I'm doing the right thing in my life, a lot of synchronicities happen.
Yes.
Which is really weird. Like, wait, I was just about to call you and you just called me. I haven't talked to you in 6 months. What the hell?
Right.
Something like that. Or it's funny because anytime my life has been a disaster, it's always whenever I chose to do something out of a fearful reaction. So like if I was really poor and which is most of my life. And then I was afraid of something like, oh, I'll just ignore that bill because I can't afford it. Always comes back to, kick my ass. Or later, I try to start something because I want it for the wrong reasons. It just implodes eventually. But yeah, you're right. You have this resonance with things that when they're coming together for the right reasons. And you might have to still push through and work hard to get there, of course.
Oh, for sure.
But it's no longer work like doing those 35 videos I did last week. As I'm doing it, I'm like, man, if I wasn't into this, I would have caved by now.
Absolutely.
And that's why you see a lot of YouTubers start out strong. Maybe their topic is something that they kind of like, but they don't really obsess over. And then after like 20 videos, they don't have anything else to say about it. So they have to get into like breaking news all the time and it gets really, tiring. Right. So yeah, I think if you're doing the right thing, you vibe with it and you feel it and you want to just keep it going for as long as you can.
Right. And I think about the early days of like, I would just do the stupidest stuff. Like I had a roommate and we were doing an acoustic duo thing and we had all this old gear and we had it in this apartment that we lived in. And we would be so like starved to like play and record ourselves playing and whatever. I worked at a TV station, a cable TV station. And on like Saturdays and Sundays, they really didn't have much going on. And we would load all of this PA gear up in like shopping carts, take them down to our cars, drive over to Brooklyn Park. We'd go into the studio. We'd set it all up. We'd tune the guitars. I'd get the cameras on and we'd record ourselves. And like just ridiculous amounts of work
Yeah.
for really nothing, just to have like a video of us playing like Wonderwall or something,
Sure.
right? And I was like, there's no way I would ever do that for anything else. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I'd be like, this is the dumbest waste of time ever. But for whatever reason, I was like, I really, really want to do that on this Sunday morning. You know what I mean?
The chemicals that were going through our brains back then. It was just like we had the ambition. And back then, as they would say, the juice was worth the squeeze.
Yes.
And like you said, loading up PA gear, that sounds like hell to me right now.
Absolutely.
Like I barely want to bring my amp to gigs, you know, and then
Right.
to have the gumption, if you will, to do all that for no payback, just to have this tape of you playing.
Right.
And who knows, maybe you'll find the tape now and go, oh my God, that's so awesome. And of course, back then you were just doing it for its own sake, but now you have the memory as well.
Right.
That when you were talking about that, it was reminding me of my old Sanctus band when we were practicing and just in our first year. And we thought, you know what? Our drummer's rich. He has this 2-story house with this gigantic balcony. What if we just set up our gear out in the balcony and like played a concert in the backyard? And we just would do spontaneous things like that. It was a lot of work to set it all up, and the cops came after the second song. But we always have that memory of like, for some reason, we just felt like that was the right thing to do at the time.
And you don't do it unless you love it, right? I mean, you know what I mean? I think that's the moral of the story. It's like whether it's sports or whether it's whatever you do, you don't get to the highest level of that thing unless you really just have this like deep internal like passion for it.
Yep. A never-ending well of inspiration and passion for it. Because once that dries up, like if you're an MMA fighter, you will literally kill your body to get to a certain level. And if you don't have that never-ending well, you're not going to keep pushing. I mean, who wants to do all that work just to get your face punched in, you know?
Right.
So that's what gets me is when people light up when they talk about something. This happened last night with my friend. We went out to eat, and we were talking about just normal band stuff for fun because he's the old drummer for my old band. And all of a sudden, we got into this topic about like cooking steaks. I don't know. I think it's because we were eating good food. And his eyes lit up, and he like was talking about this YouTuber he watches. And I was like, dude, Chris just went to another place in his mind, and he's like telling me how to do it. I'm like, I'm not remembering half of what you're talking about, but right now I feel like you're alive.
Yes.
You really love this. I'm like, you sure you don't want to start a food channel on YouTube? Because you'd be really good. And he's like, no, he's busy. He has kids and everything. But then I have other friends who are perfect for YouTube. And when they talk to me, they'll get so, like my friend Mike, who does the duo with me, he was talking to me. We were setting up for our gig or getting everything packed for a gig. He started talking about Michael Bublé and why his roadie is a certain way. And he was so into it. And he's got like the perfect voice for like radio. You know, he's got that kind of voice and personality. I'm like, dude, why don't you have a channel, man? You come alive talking about really mundane things to a lot of people, but there is a group of people that would love, I don't know, just a passionate person talking about something they love.
Right.
So like how many things in your life do you have that level of passion for or had in the past? Like sports or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really just a couple things. You know, I've always kind of found my way back to music in some way, shape, or form. And I always feel like, it sounds arrogant to say this, and I don't mean it that way, but it's like I feel like I hear music differently than some other people hear music. You know what I mean? It's just like it does so much for me. And I'll play it for somebody else, just be like, that's nice. Like, you're not connecting with it in the same way I'm connecting with it, you know? So then that tells me that I have something inside me that's connecting to that vibration of music. So that's always been one. And then I think, you know, I mean, sports, yes, but I think basketball is one thing that I had just a massive, massive, massive passion for as a kid. And it never fully like went away either. Like I can still walk out in the driveway and see a hoop and be like, it would feel really good to shoot some baskets right now.
Yeah, that's a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
That's cool. You'll be the guy in the wheelchair still making free throws.
Right, exactly.
So basketball and music.
I think, yeah, really. Those are like the two main things that I always find myself kind of
interesting
finding their way into my life in some way, shape, or form.
That's cool.
You know?
Can you put those two things together?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to.
Maybe. What about you?
Me? Oh, martial arts and music.
Yeah.
And then I went on this big trek for like, you know, trying to find the meaning of life for a while. I think that's when you and I first met. I was kind of in the throes of it, writing really, really douchey Facebook posts. But it gets to the point where you just hit this wall and you go, you know what? I feel like I've seen the other side through meditation and through like salvia and stuff. And I appreciate real life. You know, I feel like just play out this thing and do, like you said, find what you really love and just keep resonating with it. But now for me, it's music, martial arts. Like if I didn't have music, I'd be a martial art teacher or something. And now it's creating like my ideas, making them real. So for me, I'll just have an idea for a video and now I can make it happen. And the greatest payoff now is a lot of people resonate with those. So it's a great feeling when you put a video out, you wake up the next day and people are like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. Or that was interesting. My newest one is AI tablature. I asked AI like Grok, I was just like, hey, can you do
I saw one of yours on that. Yeah.
Can you do the tab for, you know, Sweet Child of Mine? Yeah. And it gives you this generic like 5-note pattern. And I actually put it in a band situation. So I added drums and stuff and people like that aspect of it. So when people like what you do, it's like the cherry on top. It's not always necessary because I would do it anyway, but I don't know, it's just a great circular feeling. Like it's all happening because it's supposed to be or something. I don't know.
And I honestly think that like depression in people sometimes comes from, I think a lot of people aren't able to find their thing. Like I think they look for it and for whatever reason they just haven't found it. And they go through life hoping that the next thing is like their thing. And then it ends up not being fulfilling. And then it's like, that's really deflating.
Not only not finding it, but knowing what it is and never doing it. I think that kills people too. I forgot the saying, but it's like, whatever's in you, you have to get it out or it'll eat you alive, basically. Like what you don't bring out will kill you inside. So if somebody, that's why I get mad at my friend who could talk about like a song from the 50s and talk about the trumpet player. And like, I don't really, it's interesting, but he's so alive. It's like he's talking about the most exciting thing. And I'm like, that's what makes you alive, man. And he just got off a really bad part of his life. And I feel like expressing that part of him would really benefit him and the world. Because you kind of, I don't know, when you benefit yourself from what you love, it also benefits the world at the same time. Even though you can do it in a, you know, just in a cave by yourself sometimes. But how do you feel when someone like loves one of your songs? It's just this weird, unexplainable thing.
It is. It's amazing to, I mean, here's the other thing. I actually have one more passion. And this is another thing that I come back to a lot is writing. Like just, writing like stories, blogs. Like when that first chapter of my band life had ended and I thought it was kind of going to be done for good, I took that moment to like retrospectively kind of like start writing about my experiences and my journey.
I remember when you started writing it out.
Yes. Yep. And so I used to go to coffee houses with a laptop and I'd sit there for 3 hours. And by the time the thing was done, it was like 163 computer pages, like single space font size 12. I mean, it was like a massive thing. And I did nothing with it other than just, I needed to write it. Something in me said, you got to write this. Yeah. And of course I thought maybe I'll share it with my son someday or whatever. But I noticed that I do love to write. And the reason I love to write is like, I want to elicit some emotion in somebody. So like, I have a banquet on Sunday that is for basketball. And I coached for 9 years, my son, and now travel basketball's over. So I'm done coaching. Like I'm retiring from coaching.
This is it.
Yes. And so the banquet for the 8th grade kids is on Sunday. And so last night I sat down and I wrote out my speech that I wanted to give. And I like crafted it in such a way that I wanted people to like tear up reading it, right? I wanted to reach people. I didn't want to just be generic, like, hey, thanks a lot to the parents, thanks a lot to the boys. I had a good time. I wanted people to feel that shit. I wanted them to be like, oh man, yeah, youth basketball it's deeper than you might think. You know what I mean? Like,
did you write it into the script, like pause for tears?
No, that just comes naturally. Yeah, but no, I love writing. If you go back and read like social media posts, whenever I get like a deep thing that I'm like care about, I'll really go deep and write a lot about it. And
yeah, you don't just skim the surface. I remember just the fact that you recently you borrowed my acoustic for a show where you had to talk a lot of like stories about each song, right?
Yes.
Was that kind of in that world too? Like
yes.
Were you at home on the typewriter or on your computer?
Sort of. And I love that. I love that show that I borrowed that guitar for so much because the audience was really receptive, first of all. Mm-hmm. And like, it was so cool for me to be able to share the story behind the song. So I'll give it an example. Like, so 3 a.m. from Matchbox 20, a lot of people don't know what it's really about. And it's really about Rob Thomas being like a 12 or 13-year-old and his mom ended up getting cancer. And so as a 13-year-old, he didn't really know how to deal with all the emotions of that. And so when you listen to the lyrics then in that vibe, it's like, you know, she said it's cold outside and she hands me my raincoat. She's always worried about things like that.
Takes on a whole new dimension.
It takes a whole new thing. And then then he said, you know, 3 a.m. was like a really quiet time when you felt like the most alone. Because like after bar close, you're having fun with your friends, you go home and it's just you're alone, right? And it's very isolating and you love that time of night. That's probably why you love that time of night, right? And so when he made that metaphor of like, and the clock on the wall has been stuck at 3 for days and days and days. It's like she's been in that perpetual state of like this loneliness. And it's like the song is a whole different song to people now. And I loved being able to tell a story. And then the way we did it was just piano and me singing it. Like people teared up and they cried. And I was like, this is what it's all about.
That's a crazy feeling when you look out and you see, you know, just people tearing up or trying to hold it back. Mm-hmm. Like, especially the guys like
right
around like that. That duo guy, my friend Mike, and I one time played, was it Just When I Needed You Most? You Left Me Just When I Needed You Most. It's like an old 60s ballad or something. Yeah. And all of a sudden this guy named Les, who was like this older guy that worked with us, he was always just I thought he was like from the military or something, real straight, and, you know, straight shooter. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I just see him, he's like, and he'd look like he was like continuously sneezing, but he was crying. And it's like, wow, we broke this guy, you know, or his memory of whatever's attached to this song. And if you really start to think of the lyrics as you sing, it's sometimes you get a little lump in your throat. It's like, oh, I just gotta shut this out of my brain, you know?
Right.
That's why I would never be able to like perform like Angel in the Morning. That song gets me. There's all these songs that really just do it for me. Luckily, it's a girl singer, so I don't have to worry about that. But damn. Well,
and you know I've always been that way because when you were in the band with me, one of my songs was called Just the Weather.
Yeah.
Right? And that was what the whole thing was about. When I have conversations, I want to talk about more than just the weather. I want to hear about your hopes and your fears. I want to connect on a deeper level. I want to feel like we're alive and living. You know what I mean? That's what I've like kind of been about my whole life, you know?
That's why you'll always be an artist inside. That's why I'm excited that you say you write, because I'm finishing it's a novella, I guess they call it a short novel, whatever. But as I'm doing it, I feel like I could do this the rest of my life. Like even when I'm 90, if I have a semblance of like a thought of my brain, I can be like, I can still put out things and talk about the past and express them, hopefully. Everyone's talking about AI taking over everything, but I don't care. I'm still going to do it.
Absolutely.
Like I've been writing these originals and I sometimes use like a voice changer to sound like a certain artist for fun. And people they just dismiss it. They're like, oh, you probably just put that into ChatGPT and it made it. I'm like, no, I spent like a whole week on this song. And even though it doesn't get like, you know, the accolades that I would love it to get, I still need to do it. You have to get it out like we keep talking about, otherwise it's just going to eat you up inside.
Right.
So. All right. Well, that was fun.
Yes.
So you want to just give them some info if they want to check out the group, and do you have like websites and all that stuff?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the band is Gen X Jukebox and it's genxjukebox.com, and we're on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. And our calendar is going to be up there. Tons of opportunities to see us this summer. That's all I'll say.
I will come out and see it, as long as it's not in a hot outdoor campground or something.
Yeah, no, you know what? You have to go. You have to go to the Champlin one. That will be kind of close by. Super beautiful venue right off the river. You love it.
Yeah, there's these band shows popping up everywhere now, so it's kind of cool that you guys can play those kind of. That's a good level to be at, by the way.
Although it's 6 to 9, that might be too early for you. I don't know if you start your day till about 10 p.m.
I'll eat breakfast and then come out and see you. So.
Sounds good.
Okay, everyone, we'll catch you later.